Hey guys, welcome back. This clip is one of the most explosive breakdowns of Donald Trump's Iran strategy you're going to hear all year, because it's not coming from some random political commentator. It's coming from Congressman Seth Moulton, an Iraq war veteran who actually served in combat and understands what these decisions mean on the ground. In this interview, Moulton completely tears apart the Trump administration's handling of Iran, exposing what he says is a total disaster in both diplomacy and military strategy. He calls out the shocking decision to lift billions of dollars in oil sanctions on Iran while American troops were still under threat. And he absolutely unloads on the administration for sidelining experienced diplomats in favor of political loyalists. What makes this clip even more intense is how direct Moulton is. He's not sugarcoating anything. He argues that Trump's actions didn't weaken Iran. They actually strengthened the hardliners, pushed the region closer to chaos, and left America in a worse position than before. He even points out that the original Iran nuclear deal was working according to U.S. intelligence assessments before Trump scrapped it. And now the Middle East is more unstable than ever. And throughout this entire exchange, you can see the tension build as the host tries to defend Trump's approach, while Moulton keeps dismantling the talking points one by one. Whether you agree with him or not, this is the kind of brutal political confrontation that's impossible to ignore. So we're going to watch the full clip together, and as always, I'll give you my thoughts throughout and at the end, because there's a lot to unpack here, especially about what this could mean for America's foreign policy, rising gas prices, and the growing fears of a wider conflict in the region. Let's get into it.
President Trump says Iran's peace offer is like a kid's wish list for Santa. Sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, demanding reparations for war. We know how much MAGA loves the word reparations, and no guarantees on nuclear weapons. So the Iranians are playing Trump, and Americans are still paying a small fortune at the pump. But you don't watch this show to rehash cable news talking points about whose problem it is or who caused the problem. There's got to be some kind of solution put forth. President Trump's put forth the solution of strangling the Iranians economically for the next couple of months. At the beginning of this conflict, a vast majority of Americans said it was important not only to end Iran's nuclear program, but also disrupt their ability to support terrorism. Important goals. Democrats don't much like Trump's solutions, but have offered little of their own. Congressman Seth Moulton is with us now. If we look forward rather than back, Congressman, because America is at the place we are, and America is better when America is respected and feared abroad, what would you do to ensure that Iran stops supporting terrorism, gives up nuclear weapons, and lastly, reopens the Strait of Hormuz?
I mean, one of the most important lessons we've learned from these misbegotten wars in the Middle East, Leland, is that you have to have a plan to win the peace. Not just win the war, but win the peace. Sadly, Trump is not only losing the war, but he's losing the peace negotiations as well. And I'm going to say something shocking here. I agree with Bill O'Reilly when he just said what we need. We need a deal for intrusive nuclear inspections, and we need to reopen the strait. Remarkably, that is exactly what President Obama handed Trump on his first inauguration. It's exactly what he handed him.
He
had intrusive inspections,
and he handed the Iranians enough money,
and the strait was open.
He handed the Iranians enough money to wildly increase terrorist activity around the Middle East, kill hundreds, if not thousands, of Israelis on October 7th.
Okay, but where are we today?
He handed them everything.
Where are we today? I'm just saying, like, look, I'm trying to find common ground.
You're saying Obama was the great statesman after handing the Iranians billions of dollars?
Excuse me?
You're saying we should be more like Obama, who gave the Iranians billions of dollars?
Wait. Oh, so Trump, when he amazingly lifted oil sanctions on the Iranians in the middle of the war, like, hey, thanks for killing 14 Americans, we're going to lift oil sanctions on you. That alone gave them $15 to $16 billion. Right now, I mean, you can buy a lot of ballistic missiles from the Chinese for $16 billion that we just handed Iran in the course of this war.
Okay,
so don't talk about Obama actually got something for that money. Whether you like the price or not, Leo, hold on. Whether you like the price or not, Obama got something for that money. He got intrusive inspections. He got a deal that prevented Iran from ever having a nuclear weapon. And Trump's own first administration certified they were following the deal.
Let's try to get into this decade of where we're at right now. Democrats don't like anything Trump's done. They didn't like his negotiations with Iran. They don't like the war with Iran. They don't like how he's treating the Israelis. What do you do right now to restore American deterrence and to reopen the strait? And if it is not continuing to strangle Iran economically and potentially use military force against them.
The only two options here at the end of the day, the only two options are to actually take over Iran to reopen the strait. We're talking Iraq war again. Iran is twice the population of Iraq, so maybe 300,000 troops, since we all agree the 100,000 we sent to Iraq wasn't initially enough, because that would actually eliminate their nuclear weapons program, actually change their regime into a more peaceful regime, a Western-oriented regime, and actually reopen the strait. But if you're not willing to do that, then at the end of the day, you've got to negotiate with the Iranians. So here's a first step. How about send some professionals to negotiate instead of real estate tycoon Steve Witkoff? Where is the Secretary of State? I mean, I would be embarrassed right now if I was Marco Rubio. There's a geopolitical crisis. It's causing major domestic problems with rising gas prices. And Marco Rubio's been sent to babysit Cuba? I mean, what is
Marco
going
Rubio
on with
seems
this,
to be the most popular
negotiations?
member of the administration right now.
You're
going to trash
what
Rubio
I'm asking
now?
is, where are the professionals to actually negotiate a decent deal? You've got people who've negotiated with Iran for decades in the State Department. Why are they being sidelined?
I don't think any. I think the reason there's new people is because the people in the State Department who are negotiating with Iran seem to be apologists for Iran. So,
no, absolutely not apologists for Iran, because they actually got a deal that prevented them from having a nuclear weapon. And the bottom line is that the one
I get
big
the Democrats now
achievement—
seem to want to go. They seem to say that Obama was this panacea to the Middle East. I was
No,
there.
look, and look,
I was there
critical
with Obama in the Middle East. It turned into a complete disaster. The Arab Spring.
Okay, well, first of all,
didn't really work out.
Listen, Leland, don't forget that I've been on the ground in Iraq. I've seen Americans killed by Iranians.
Yep.
So don't question my concern about the national security threat that Iran poses. I just actually want to see us win. I want to actually see Iran be prevented from having a nuclear weapon. And what I would really like to see is actual regime change in Iran from within. And when you have a diplomatic deal that you then build on with more diplomatic deals to strengthen it, to make it better rather than tearing it up and starting a war, you actually empower the moderates in the country rather than the hardliners.
Yeah,
and everything Trump has done is empowered the hardliners.
Okay, well, I think that's one method. I don't buy that it's going to work, but I understand the point.
Well, it'd be a lot better than right now, because we've literally gotten nothing out of them. For all of Trump's bluster and bombs, he's gotten nothing out of the Iranians except they've closed the strait, which they've never closed before.
They're phenomenally weakened. They're nearly broke. We have
how are they? Wait, they're so weakened that they keep attacking the U.S.
They're 2 to 4 months away from economic collapse. And
well, first of all,
that's the report Democrats love talking about. So, look, there's two ways to get to the point. You're arguing one way. From having been in the Middle East,
if you think Trump is actually going to hold out 4 months, I mean, you give him more credit than I do.
Well, we'll see. That is the $1 trillion question.
It is a $1 trillion question. No,
right.
You're right. It is a $1 trillion question. We'll
Congressman,
see.
thank you. We will. We'll talk to you soon.
Always good to see you, Leland.
After watching that entire exchange, it's hard to ignore just how damaging this debate is becoming for Donald Trump politically. Seth Moulton didn't come across like someone making partisan talking points. He sounded like someone genuinely frustrated watching the same cycle repeat itself all over again. And whether people agree with every argument he made or not, the bigger issue he raised is one Americans are going to keep asking: if Trump's Iran strategy was supposed to bring peace and strength, why does the region look more dangerous now than before? That's really the core of this conversation. Moulton's argument is that Trump tore up an imperfect but functioning agreement without having any real replacement ready. And years later, the consequences are everywhere. Rising tensions, instability in global oil markets, fears of escalation, and an Iran that appears even more aggressive and harder to contain. That's the point that hit hardest during this clip. Not just the criticism itself, but the idea that America may have traded diplomacy for chaos without gaining anything in return. And politically, this matters because Moulton isn't some anti-war activist with no military experience. He served in Iraq. He understands firsthand what happens when conflicts in the Middle East spiral out of control. So when he says Trump's bluster and bombs strategy failed, people are going to listen differently. His criticism carries weight because it comes from someone who has actually seen the human cost of these decisions. At the same time, Trump supporters are obviously going to argue the opposite, that Trump projected strength, that Iran was weaker under his administration, and that Democrats are ignoring the threats posed by the regime. That debate isn't going away anytime soon. But what made this interview stand? How does that Moulton force the conversation away from slogans and back onto results? Are Americans safer? Is Iran weaker? Is the region more stable? Those are the questions voters are eventually going to judge for themselves. And honestly, one of the most uncomfortable moments in this entire clip was the discussion about diplomacy, or the lack of it. The criticism about experienced diplomats being sidelined in favor of political allies is something that's becoming harder to dismiss when the situation keeps escalating. Foreign policy isn't reality TV, it's not branding, it's not campaign rallies. These decisions affect soldiers, families, global markets, and potentially millions of lives. News argument. It was a warning about what happens when foreign policy becomes driven by ego, political optics, and short-term headlines instead of long-term strategy. Whether you support Trump or not, the stakes here are far bigger than party politics. We're talking about war, global stability, and the possibility of even deeper conflict in the future. But I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think Seth Moulton was telling the hard truth about Trump's Iran strategy? Or do you think he's ignoring the pressure Iran was putting on the United States before all of this escalated? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video.